Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point on AFR Talk. I am your congenial, convivial, and amiable host, Brian Fisher. Really, really happy to be back home. My Boise State Broncos tonight going to be on ESPN, kicking off the football season at Michigan State, breaking in a brand new quarterback, so I'm very eager to see how all of that turns out. Now, we're going to open up our phone lines a little bit early today because we were guest intensive over the last 3 days. Didn't take as many of your phone calls as we would have liked to. So we're going to open things up a little bit early today. The number to call if you want to weigh in on the program. And again, we want to kind of talk about, it's free for all Friday. So Jan's a call screener. She'll give you some latitude because on Free for All Friday, we like to have you talk about anything you want to talk about. But what we'd really like the focus to be is your reaction to what you saw at the Republican National Convention over the last 3 days. That's what we'd like to hear about. We'll take your calls, 888-589-8840. Now, a couple of things. One of the interesting things that happened there at the RNC, and some of you who are listening the last couple of days were aware of this, I had a chance encounter with a lesbian activist by the name of Ellen Ratner. Very friendly woman. We enjoyed each other immensely. I actually brought her on for a brief segment to be a guest on my program. And now she's a former lesbian activist. She made that very clear that she's now involved in running a business, and so she's not as politically active as she used to be. But it was an intriguing thing to me, and somebody took, we talked about this at the RNC, somebody took a video of our initial exchange when I first talked to her on Tuesday when we showed up there, got posted on YouTube, and just showed us having a very friendly exchange. She invited me to this homosexual extravaganza they have every year at the RNC, and it was very pleasant exchange, and I brought her on. And the reason I brought her on is that, and I want to rehearse this again because this is extremely important. Mark Regnerus at the University of Texas, Austin, did the most extensive study that's been done of children who have been raised in homosexual households. They've been raised in same-sex households. And he talked to them as adults to discern what impact it had for them to be raised in a non-normative domestic environment. And he discovered that in the 80 measures, 80 outcomes, this all has to do with physical health. It has to do with mental health. It has to do with behavioral health. It has to do with emotional health. It has to do with psychological health. He discovered that in these 80 outcomes, children raised in same-sex households did worse in 77 of the 80 outcomes. 77 out of the 80 outcomes when they were compared to children who were raised in an intact biological household headed by a mother and a father who were married to each other. And also, Regnerus discovered that 23% of the children who grow up in a same-sex household report unwanted sexual touching of one kind or another. I mean, more severe than that in most cases, but at a minimum, where the average in the heterosexual population is just 2%. So very, very clearly, being in a same-sex household environment is risky to children. It's risky to their physical health. It's risky to their sexual integrity. It's risky to their emotional health and their ability to develop into high-functioning adults. Now, when Regnerus came out with his study, it was immediately assailed by people on the left, including a blogger by the name of Scott Rosenzweig. He goes by the name of Scott Rose. Now, he's just a blogger, not even a staff member or faculty member at University of Texas, Austin. And he accused Regnerus of scientific misconduct in the study and in how the results were reported in a scientific article about the study's findings. This was published in a peer-reviewed journal. It wasn't published in the AFA Journal or the House organ of the Family Research Council or Focus on the Family. It was published in a peer-reviewed journal. That's supposed to be the gold standard. You have something in a peer-reviewed journal, then you're just supposed to accept that that's a valid deal, but they can't do it because it blows their entire myth. They want to perpetuate the myth that homosexual parents, that environment is just as healthy for children as being raised by a mom and a dad. Now, we know that's not true. We absolutely know that's not true. We know that biblically. We know that historically. We know that culturally. We know that by common sense. We know that by our own personal experience and observation. And now it's confirmed by solid social research. Now, all they can do in a case like this is challenge methodology. And that's immediately what they do. Oh, the methodology was flawed. It's bad methodology. It's terrible. It's shallow. It's misguided. And this is a blogger doing this. And the University of Texas, I mean, I cannot imagine any other research scientist on their faculty that they would subject to this process just because of a blogger. Somebody gets a hair out of joint and complains about it, and they run out to have an official inquiry. But the University of Texas did. And the beauty of this is they gave Professor Regnerus an absolutely complete bill of health. So if you're talking about this study with somebody, I will guarantee you they will say that the methodology was flawed. They'll tell you that the methodology was flawed. But here is the University of Texas. And remember, their name is on this. This guy's on their faculty. Their reputation is at stake here. Their name's on this. If there's any skullduggery involved, which is a really great word, by the way, the word skullduggery, I recommend you add that to your vocabulary. If there was any skullduggery involved, if there was any methodological impropriety here, then they're going to call him on it because their academic reputation is at stake. But an official University of Texas at Austin inquiry has found that Professor Mark Regnerus, the author of a research study on the effects of same-sex relationships upon children, quote, did not commit scientific misconduct. Did not commit scientific misconduct when designing, executing, and reporting the research. So there was no misconduct anywhere in this process. The design was sound, the execution of the study was sound, and reporting on the research, every last part of this study was sound. So when somebody brings that up, you talk about this study on parenting, and they will say, oh, that was methodologically flawed. And you say, no, the University of Texas cleared him. They have closed their inquiry into this completely. He's been entirely vindicated. Design, execution, and reporting on the research. So that is extremely, extremely good news as we continue to participate in this sort of discussion and debate over what's going on in the public arena, particularly as it has to do with homosexual behavior. Now, one quick soundbite before we go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's just grab clip number one. I was there last night when Dirty Harry came out on the platform, thunderous. I don't know if you were watching the RNC, but Clint Eastwood was, in fact, the mystery speaker, just showed up on stage, and the place just went absolutely berserko, just went absolutely nuts. Now, and then he went into this rambling, sort of incoherent thing, which wound up being an endorsement for Mitt Romney. I had a tough time even following. The sound wasn't real distinct where I was sitting in the arena. But I thought it might be worth just to play at least one little soundbite from Clint Eastwood. This is his rejection of Barack Obama and his endorsement of Miss Romney. Here's a part of it. Let's listen.
I remember 3.5 years ago when Mr. Obama won the election. And though I wasn't a big supporter, I was watching that night when he was having that thing, and they were talking about hope and change, and they were talking about yes, we can, and it was dark, and it was outdoors, and it was nice, and people were lighting candles, and they were saying, and I just thought, this is great. I mean, everybody's crying. Oprah was crying, and I was even crying. And then finally, I haven't cried that hard since I found out that there's 23 million unemployed people in this country. And now that is something to cry for, because that is a disgrace, a national disgrace, and we haven't done enough, obviously. This administration hasn't done enough to cure that. And whatever interest they have is not strong enough. And I think possibly now it may be time for somebody else to come along and solve the problem.
And he led us in a chant. Well, I didn't participate. I was just kind of watching everybody else. But the end of the deal, basically talking about November 6th, Clint Eastwood started it and the crowd finished it. Make my day. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Christina in Conway, Arkansas. Christina, Conway, Arkansas. Welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hi, thanks for having me.
You bet.
Well, I picked up just the tail end of something a while ago when I turned on the radio about abortion. I don't think it was you talking because somebody mentioned what Brian was talking about. So, but I was very disappointed in the man's response about, I think it was, if it's an either-or situation, baby or wife, that in that case we just look for God to have mercy and tell the doctor to do what he has to do. Mm-hmm. First of all, I can see why pro-lifers would lose any credibility with an argument like that. I would say that's akin to if a murderer comes in and tells a woman, it's you or your child, and you shove the child out in front of him and say, take him, I don't want to die. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I've been a sidewalk counselor at abortion clinics, and I would say 4 out of 5 women use that excuse. My doctor said that my baby's going to die anyway, and if we don't have an abortion, I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very hypocritical to say something like that. I think, I was asked that same question ministering on a college campus one time. Would I personally have an abortion if I was told that I was going to die? I said, no, I would not. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to put my life before my baby's life. Yeah. I'm going to, Mark Crutcher put it succinctly, the doctor should do whatever it takes to save both lives. If the baby dies in the process, that is not an abortion. That is not murder. Yeah. But to say, okay, the baby's, going to die anyway, and to take that into our own hands is murder. Yeah. And it's wrong.
Well, and that's a good call, Christina, and I thank you very much for that. And I think the teaching of Jesus to a mom is crystal clear on this. Greater love, he says, has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friend, or lay down his life or her life for her baby. That's love, laying down your life for the sake of another. And I think that would be the calling on a mother who's paying attention to the ethical teaching of Christ. So I appreciate that call, Christina, very much. Thank you for that. Listen to Focal Point, AFR Talk. We'll be right back. More content, more calls. Stay with us.